Hello, fellow weirdos, and welcome to Horror Through Her Eyes. You've got the Taminator and amateur destroyer in the his house, ready to
Yay.
explore the twisted world of horror and prove that girls enjoy horror just as much as the guys do. Tammy, how are you doing?
I am doing great. I am enjoying. We are having record warmth here in southeastern Wisconsin, so it's strange. I'm sure it's the one day of Indian summer that we get here. So I was out
Yeah.
enjoying it earlier, and yeah, I was excited about recording tonight. So how are you doing?
Oh my God, I'm freezing. It's like the first day where I'm like freezing for some reason. I don't know if it's even that cold, but all of our other fall days have been like pretty moderate,
Mhm.
even if they're rainy. But for some reason today, it's like I've got chills down to the bone. Um, so, bleh.
That should
Not
get
a
you in the
great.
mood.
It should. No, I love rainy weather. So that part's cool. I just don't like being very, very cold for no reason. But I am super excited to get into our movie.
I know, me too. Me too.
So
Me too. Me too.
before we do that, we're gonna get into our fright bites. So Tammy, what have you been doing lately that's horror related, whether it's watching a movie or reading a book or going to an event?
Well, nothing that exciting, just mostly movie watching, but several, which I can go through quickly. Do you want to go? Do you have some movies too?
I was just gonna bring up one that I watched and then talk about our recent episode on the horror cast.
All right, then I will quickly go through mine. Right before we were started recording, I was watching this year's Joe Bob Halloween special, which was Halloween of all things. That was really good. It was cute. I mean, I feel like I know everything about that movie, but I still just like listening to him talk for a reason. I don't know. I just love
Yes.
him. I watched the new episode of Creep Show, which was fine. I think I messaged you about the episode that I liked the most, which was the Romero one, which I said was just seemed like such a love letter to him. It almost made me cry. Did you end up watching it?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's
Well,
on the docket.
it's so sweet. And I think any horror lover, as soon as they watch it, will know what I'm talking about. But overall, the season wasn't the greatest. So, like, I've
Yeah.
already kind of forgot all the other ones. And that was only like, over the weekend. So,
By the way, because you said that was on AMC, so is that no longer on Shutter?
Shutter is on AMC. That's why I get AMC because you get Shutter, you get BBC America, Sundance, AMC, and IFC Films for like
Ooh.
not like I think Shutter's like $5.99 and AMC's like $8.99. So to me, it's totally worth it. Um,
Yeah. So I should
I
still be able to watch it on Shutter.
Yeah, you can still watch it.
Okay. Because I know
Um,
that yeah, AMC and Shutter like combined at some point. Okay, cool.
yeah, it's just like I don't know. It seems like it's like everything you could get on AMC plus then those extra channels, really. But of course, they really push all that new Walking Dead stuff because like Walking Dead is over, but now there's like three new shows.
Yeah.
I actually tried watching the Daryl Dixon one, and because I gave up with Negan and the Bat, that's when I stopped watching. So it's been that many years, and I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, this could be a fresh start. I have no idea how he got to France. I don't know anything, but I'm gonna watch a couple episodes, And it was just like, nah. Like I don't think this is gonna sound terrible. Like I was the biggest Walking Dead fan back in the day. I went to the conventions. All my kids were into it. It was great. I thought
Oh.
he was great. Uh,
Yeah.
but him, I don't think he has the chops to carry a show on his own. It was just kind of like, for some reason, he stood out like his acting wasn't that great. And I just wasn't that
Ooh.
interested in the storyline. And I watched like three
Yeah.
episodes. So I feel like, I mean, that's like half the season. So I feel like I gave
Yeah.
it a fair chance. That's not going to be the thing that sucks me back in. So,
Yeah, and that character, the fun thing about him is seeing him interact with other characters, not by himself,
right. And he
because they like
is,
expect him to be one way.
and it was the dynamic of that core group on the show.
Hmm.
He is the
Yeah.
only, he does go to France, but he can't speak the language or anything. So I feel like he's still pretty much by himself and he's still
Yeah.
carrying the show. Now he ends up, I don't want to give too much away in case people are planning on watching, but from what I saw, the couple episodes, like he ends up at a nunnery or wherever nuns are, like, where nuns live. And there's one there that can speak English, but he's still trying to be his like badass self. And it's just weird. I don't know. I just I was feeling his acting for some reason, which I don't feel like I ever did before. But his role before was just kind of like not to say much and to just be Daryl. Like he was like more supporting people. And it's like, did he love Carol? What was going on there? I don't even know. I don't even know if Carol's still alive. I have no idea. But like him on his own, I'm just not, I don't know. I thought I would like it better than I did. Maybe I wouldn't even say it's because I've missed too much of the story, because it really picks up with him crawling out of the water. And I don't think it matters how he got there because they don't really talk about it or anything. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I watched the new VHS. I thought it was wonderful. I was scared. I had to watch it in 3 parts because it was just really getting to me, which yay for a movie that can do that, Totally. And I have always thought, even if I didn't love, I love some of their movies better than others. And even on the ones that I don't love so much, I feel like their effects are so good. And I'm sure they've got to be CGI, but it doesn't really stand out that way. And man, this one was, it was just hard to watch, and not hard to watch in a bad way, hard to watch like, how, it's awful. You know what I mean? Like, ew, that's terrible.
I think I need to give that one another chance.
So I didn't like the last one so much, but I loved the one before it. I thought that one was also like hard to watch, if you asked me. And this one has some cool, I don't remember if they really did this before, but like where if you kind of watch as the stories go into each other, you'll get some overlapping of characters, which I really like that. So
yeah.
Cool. I'm still watching American Horror Story. Delicate. I'm still liking it. I'm waiting.
You are?
I'm waiting for it to. However, I get what people are saying, about the Kim Kardashian thing, but she's really, really in it so minimally, and she's really playing herself, so you don't expect anything different from her. Just accept her for what she is, but don't not watch it because she's in it. And like I said, I think it's like a retelling of Rosemary's Baby. Like even her baby doctor's called Dr. Hill. There's witches, and I'm seeing a lot of nods. If not, I know it's based on a book. Maybe that's what's helping a little, because they had some sort of story structure that they didn't write, that they're going off of, So I don't know. This is just, I don't know. I'm on board. I'm still like, what are we, 5 or 6 in, and I'm still like, what the heck is going on? But that's fine, because that just makes me want to keep watching.
Yeah, totally.
I think that might be, I think that's all my new stuff. How about you?
Yeah, I just wrote down that I recently watched Hell Night with Linda Blair from 1981, and that was a blind spot for me. I've always wanted to watch it. That one, it's an 80s movie, and it's a slasher, and it's one where they take college students over to this house where this tragic thing happened to this family, and they had all these like mongoloid children or whatever. And
okay, does it have a mirror?
And they have to like,
is there a mirror? Is there a mirror involved?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm thinking of something else. I don't think I've seen that one then.
Okay, it's like you have to stay in the house for the night and make till dawn for college hazing stuff. But then everything goes terribly awry. It was actually kind of boring, which was kind of disappointing for me because I've always wanted to see it. But the setting was really cool, like the castle, whatever that they're staying in is neat. And I actually kind of like some of the characters, but they make like really dumb decisions, which is a given. But sometimes it's like every single character is making the worst decision that they can.
Yeah.
Okay, come on. Like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
You know you're in danger.
Yeah.
So I didn't love it. I'm going to try and rewatch it again at some point in the future and pay more attention because I kind of just had it on in the background. So I'm hoping that that's what the biggest issue was.
Could be.
Yeah.
I think though do you remember, you probably don't because you're a baby, But she like made this like skating movie that like competed with Skate Town USA and like all these really really terrible movies. Like it's like she never just got like her mojo after I don't know,
Oh,
back after Exorcist. But I don't know, maybe we should
yeah.
do a retrospective on her or something someday because nobody totally ever does,
Yeah. She
But
peaked when she was a kid.
yeah,
What a bummer.
yeah, that would suck.
And then I was just going to mention that we recorded a kinder trauma episode over on the Horrorcast, and I got to pick one of the movies for this
Mhm.
last episode, and I picked Dolls. And the whole point of this series is to revisit a movie that scarred us as children. So this was a movie that I watched and then never returned to. And now that I've returned to it as an adult, I'm like completely obsessed with it. So it's kind of funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so if you guys want to hear that, go check us out on the Horrorcast. On the next one, Tammy is going to pick a movie, so we'll have to talk about Tammy stuff at that point. But that's all I put down for Fright Bites. I mean, I've been watching stuff, but it's nothing I really want to like go over or address. I saw Haunted Mansion from Disney, and I thought it was really cute.
I want to see
Um,
that so bad. I want to see that. And
yeah,
I have Disney right now, I think, so I'll get to it
nice.
eventually.
And this is the time of the year when I'm like actually down for watching kid movies, even though I no longer have a small child. So I think if I tried to watch it at any other point, I'd be like, bored, turning it off. But in October, I'm like my childhood self. So
Yep.
it was a delightful watch.
So,
So that's all I've got for that.
all right.
And we've got kind of a short show today. We're just going to move right into our horror movie review. And this week we're reviewing Carnival of Souls. Yay. Uh,
Yay.
so, after a traumatic accident, a woman becomes drawn to a mysterious abandoned carnival. It's pretty brief and pretty accurate. So, I thought it was a fine synopsis. This is pretty much streaming everywhere for free. So, if you haven't seen it, please do. Just a reminder, our podcast will be a spoiler-filled podcast in general, unless we're just doing short initial reactions during our Fright Bite segment. So you've all been warned, we're going to be spoiling this. Carnival of Souls came out in 1962 and is rated approved and runs at 1 hour and 18 minutes. It is directed by Herc Harvey and written by John Clifford and Herc Harvey. They don't look like they did much outside of this, but everything that they did work on, they worked on together, it looks like, as I was going through their IMDb. And Herc Harvey, the director, is the main ghoul in
Yeah.
Carnival of Souls. So that's
That's
really
cool.
fun. It's, I think, the only thing he ever actually acted in.
Yep.
And Carnival of Souls also stars Candice Hilligoss as Mary Henry. We have Frances Feist as Miss Thomas, the landlord. Sidney Berger as John Linden, the creep. Art
Yep.
Ellison as the minister. Stan Levitt as Dr. Samuels. And Tom McGinnis as the organ factory boss, which I was wondering if that's what he was. And, that's what his title is. So that was helpful. I was like, wait, is this literally just an organ factory? Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah.
All
Yes, it
right.
is. Okay, every week we will switch off who chooses the movie we will be reviewing. And this week is the Amateur Destroyers pick. Jessica, can you tell the listeners why you chose this movie?
So I chose this movie because I've actually only seen it once, but it's one that's always stuck in my mind visually. I just love the visuals. And I remembered that there was a lot going on with our female lead. And I couldn't remember exactly everything that was going on, but I remembered certain little things here and there, like her interactions with Lyndon and how creepy he is and off-putting. So I wanted to revisit it because I thought it would be a good one for us to talk about on this podcast specifically.
Very much so. I totally agree. And I think there's so many ways that you can look at this movie. Did you get to watch the little interview thing that I sent you with her?
No, I didn't.
Okay, that's all right. I'll
Sadly.
tell you all about it.
Yes,
I
do.
thought,
And I'm
yeah,
including the link in our show notes, everybody, just so you know, because it looks pretty legit.
it was. And they say on there, I don't know, I didn't look how many years ago it was recorded, but it was her only full length interview ever, and she's like 80 in this thing. It wasn't done that long ago, and
Wow.
she did go on to become an actress, not like in a ton of things. She did a lot of Broadway and off Broadway. She was married to a famous actor and wrote a book about it, but she doesn't say in the interview who the actor was. So I don't know if she just never says or if she just didn't bring it up on that show. And I didn't look it up to see, but I mean, I don't remember seeing her in anything else, but she was naming some of the people she worked with and some of the directors she worked with and stuff. So she is still in stuff I know I've probably seen, maybe just didn't realize it was her. But this was like her first big thing that she was ever in. So,
Yeah.
which it wasn't a big thing. It was a nothing, you know.
All
So
right.
I mean, she's just so, she carries the movie, and I think she's so memorable. And I don't think they could have found anyone more, because she seems like so cold and stuff in this movie. But watching her in this interview, she's like a completely different person. So she was playing that like far off gaze, and did
Yeah.
such a good job in the movie. So yeah.
Nice.
All right.
Yeah, she is still alive and she was born in 1935. It looks like she did also star in The Curse of the Living Corpse. So that's at least one other horror cred that she has. But that's so great that she's still alive. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we look back on these old movies and we're just going through the list of everybody that's passed away, and it's kind of a bummer. So I am definitely going to watch that interview that you sent me, though.
I think you really like it. It's like on somebody's like, I think it's called Creature Features.
Yeah.
This guy, and he's pretty obnoxious, so I just kind of like fast forward through a lot of him. And they like
Okay.
they kind of do it like Joe Bob style, where they like play the movie, but then break in every 20 minutes or so and talk about what's going on and some of the
Mm.
behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that guy's like an Ozzy Osbourne wannabe. But I don't know, the interview with her is just delightful. So yeah.
Nice.
I would
Oh,
definitely
that's great.
recommend it. And I think that some of the issue too is I think her movie is just now starting to get appreciated, really. I mean, it's been in the public domain forever, but I just, I know it played on TV and stuff, but I think it's really now where people are having discussions about it. It seems like to me, I'm not saying it's never been discussed or whatever. I'm just saying it seems like it's really starting to get like a cult following now. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, now she's got to be going on what, 90 years old. I mean, yay that she's still alive, but it's a
Right.
treasure. I think that we did get that long hour and a half interview with her before too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that this movie didn't actually make that much money when it came out, which is always a bummer. Was not a success, but we love it.
Yes, we do.
Or I guess I don't want to speak for you or give
Oh
anything
no,
away.
unlike you, I watch this at least once a year, if not twice. Sometimes
Oh,
it might be on while I'm working, but I do also, I think at least once a year, just like sit down and straight up watch it. And like I said about Rosemary's Baby, every time I watch it, I still feel like I get something from it,
yeah.
and can maybe see something I didn't see before. I just absolutely hate that guy, what's his face, in the apartment. So those scenes make me cringe
Yeah.
because,
Lyndon. Yeah.
yeah. But I
Ugh.
mean, I'm sure he's, pardon me, playing exactly, I mean, just like she was so perfect for what she played, I think he was perfect. He did a. Great job with what he played too. So
Yes.
you can't get much
Absolutely.
more creepy of a guy than that. And I think some of it is the time. That guy would, he'd be arrested by him, doing some of that stuff
Hmm.
now. But I think of the time, and I think she was just so desperate for some human contact that she put up with him probably a lot more than she might have under
Oh,
other
yeah.
circumstances. But
Oh, yeah. We're definitely going to get into all that. Just to kind of set up the movie. We start off with a road race between a car full of boys and a car full of girls. And they're going over a bridge. The girls veer off and fly off into the water. And then 3 hours later, there's a crowd of people looking for them, and they're saying it's been 3 hours, this isn't looking good. When one of the girls, Mary, crawls ashore, but says that she can't remember anything, so she's not sure what happened to the other girls. So that's just kind of the basic setup. It doesn't seem like the boys had like forced them off the bridge or anything like that. It just seemed like a innocent mistake somehow. And they get questioned on that too in the scene. The boys do. Like, are you sure you weren't overcrowding them or anything? The boys seem like they're genuinely worried and like they didn't do anything. And I watched it and you can't see them doing anything. So
Right. Yeah,
I think
agreed.
it's just an accident.
Can I intercept real? How about that abrupt beginning? I mean, it just starts. Whammo, here we go. And she said in her interview, and it makes, I always wondered, like, in fact, I remember the first time I ever watched this, I like tried a couple different versions because I thought maybe the beginning was just cut off. What am I
Yeah.
missing? Where's the intro? And because this was one of the first independent horror movies ever made, they didn't have to credit a studio or anything like that. So there's none of that
Oh,
beginning. It was just like whammo right into it. And then,
yeah.
it's right after they crash, right? Then we start getting the titles, I believe.
Hmm.
They play the music and stuff. But yeah,
I
it
think
was
you're right.
for a long time. I was like, I think part of this movie is cut off. What am I missing?
That's
But
funny. Yeah.
I mean, the picture comes on screen and they're in a drag race, and that's the beginning of it. But that's why we're so used to seeing those movies with, like, you know Universal or American International or
Yeah.
20th Century Fox or whatever, and they
Right.
didn't have to do that in this one. So thus
Wow. That
that's
is interesting.
and because it was kind of like the first of its kind, I don't think they probably even realized there was anything weird about it. But there was really nothing to put there.
Yeah.
I guess they could have done a title sequence, but I thought it looked cool how they did it. Kind of like, I don't know, like words are kind of going this way, and it just like in the shape of whatever's on the screen. I mean, they still try to
Yeah.
make it visually interesting, but yeah,
Right. That's a good way to put it. Because I just remember being like, that looks old.
yeah.
I'm
Well,
like, I'm
yes,
sure at the
it does.
time this was revolutionary.
Yeah.
So in the next scene, she's at her current job, which is at an organ factory, because you see those everywhere.
Oh
Um,
yeah, and a organ that takes up an entire room like that, sure.
I love that scene. Her organ is so gigantic and beautiful and elaborate. It's so neat. And you just see, I like how they go to different people's faces and they all just get a moment of them like enjoying her
Just
music.
rapturous about her
Yes.
music, but she's excellent at it. But
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, did you notice? Okay, we see her come crawling out of, so back to the other scene. We see her come
Oh yeah.
crawling out of the water, and she's
Hmm.
all muddy and has like a dress, I think a dress with a pattern on it. And it then cuts very quickly to her in a different outfit, all clean, standing there looking over the side of the bridge. Uh,
Hmm.
what do you think happened there? Do you think it's supernatural? Do you think it's like, because they're still trying to find the car when she comes back and she's watching what they're doing, but it seems like everybody else was where they were when she crawled out of the water, but then she walks up the bridge and looks over and she's in a nice
Oh.
dress and she's all
Oh
clean.
my God. Well, I didn't even notice that,
Oh.
but I am just kind of very interested in general, like what is going on with Mary and what do we speculate is actually happening with the story. So if you want, we can just get into it now.
Well, I don't want, I mean, I think we should probably lead up to that, but I mean, one of the
Okay.
things is, did Mary survive the crash or not? I mean, it's
Right.
ultimately, and I think that might be the moment. If you choose to see it that she did not survive, then that might be the moment where, because she seems to kind of slip as we go on, we can talk about, but she seems to kind of slip back and forth between realities. Um,
Hmm.
and like, has she slipped into her other reality, or has she started her other life at this point? So I just wondered if
Yes.
what you thought, but we can.
Uh, I honestly don't even know what I actually think. I just have all the different scenarios
Yeah.
kind of rattling around in my head. I don't know if it's helpful, but I just noticed that the tagline is "She escaped death and now it wants her back."
So, have you seen most of the Twilight Zone episodes, the original black and white Rod
When I
Serling?
was a kid, but I like can't really remember them except all the big ones that everyone goes back and rewatches.
Do you remember the one called The Hitchhiker, where a girl, I forget, um, something happens to her car and she stops on the side of the road. I don't quite remember if she gets hit or something happens, but then we then see her driving away, and all of a sudden, she starts seeing this ghoul-looking man everywhere she goes. And
Mm.
they mentioned this in the interview, like, was this based on that episode? And Candace really never quite says, but she does acknowledge that even if it's not entirely based on it, it's definitely like, that was definitely an influence for it. But even in the
Mm.
Twilight Zone episode, the girl, well, I guess we don't ever really truly know. It's kind of like the same thing. Like, did she survive? Did she actually get in a crash? And now death is coming for her. And, in the Twilight Zone episode, the death ultimately gets her, is how that one ends. But I think this movie leaves it a little bit more ambiguous, I would say,
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah,
interesting.
love
I
it.
love it. Yes. And so when she's talking to her boss at the organ factory, he's talking to her about how he got her a job in Utah at a church and asks if her accident is going to delay, um, her moving. And she said that no, it's not going to delay it. She's still right on time, but she says that basically she has to skip out on like saying goodbye to her parents or anyone. And she's just going there straight away after playing the organ at this organ factory. And she does go out of her way to say that for her, working at this church is just a job. And that's all she sees it as. She's not taken any vows, is what she says. And the boss tells her that playing the organ takes more than intellect, and he asks that she put her soul into it. And
Her soul into it.
her soul into it. This is kind of a recurring theme, where people talk about her soul when also talking about her organ playing, because the minister later on at her new church brings that up too.
Yep.
And her not being religious comes up a few times. And that made me wonder if this is supposed to be a test for her, like, and that she's maybe in purgatory and she's given this chance to take the vows and believe, and then she would be able to ascend to heaven, maybe. I'm not sure, but it
I
did
think,
make me think that. What do you think?
oh, for sure. I think there's a very strong argument for that. I'm there's another way to see this, and I'm just going to lay this out here now because then people can kind of like follow along and kind of maybe try to see how they see it. I have also heard it talked about that, she is feeling so outside of society, and maybe it possibly has to do with she has a mental illness, because once if you probably don't notice it, but I think if you go back and rewatch it, the organ music never stops playing after that time that it's almost like pretty much constant throughout the movie. Like, even she's trying to change it on her car radio and she can't get it
Oh, yeah.
to be to any other music. Like, either she has a mental illness and all of this is just kind of happening in her head. I've also heard that some of it, so in 1962, the DSM had just come out, the first time that they started putting names to different kind of psychological illnesses.
Mm.
I've also heard it that she is asexual or possibly homosexual, and that is why feels so outside and doesn't want anyone to touch her, doesn't,
Oh, wow.
really get close to anybody. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe, I mean, all of those things could apply. Maybe those things feels she has to atone for in her life, but I do think that's a really good way. I mean, it would kind of explain some of like why she doesn't believe in the church, why she doesn't want any men to touch her, not
Yeah.
necessarily homosexual. It could just be as simple as being asexual, but back then they didn't
Yeah.
really have names for those kind of things.
Right.
But
Yeah.
her going, and then she does spend a little bit of a time with a psychiatrist, and he doesn't even really know what to label her with. But like I said, they had just started giving names to, you know, things that we take for granted nowadays. They didn't really even have names for back then. But
Right.
you know, this the fact that she's such an outsider. So is she an outsider because she's actually existing in a different plane right now? I totally buy into the purgatory thing. I think that makes a lot of sense because there is a lot of religious symbolism, not in a way that I usually find offensive. You know, I usually hate that kind of thing. I think it serves a purpose here, and it's not to like preach to me. It's for her to like deal with her things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just think there's so many different. What makes this movie so great is you could watch it 10 times and see something different. You know, each time, and
Yes.
it never answers the question for you. All of the things we
No.
just discussed could be true. You know what I
And
mean?
I love what you just brought up as a lens to watch this through because that would make so much sense. And I don't know if people were thinking about things that way back then, but I feel like that would be totally fitting for the
It was just,
situation.
yeah, it was just starting to come into the zeitgeist, but she gives little clues like, no, I'm not going to go see my parents. No, I will never return here. So it's almost like either
Mm.
she knows that she's done for, you know, maybe.
Yeah,
Does she know it somehow that something has happened to her? We don't
right,
know that she's dead. We don't know that she's alive. There's lots of clues to make you think she is like a spirit because she can
right.
see and hear things and not see and hear things that other people can. Sometimes people can't see and hear her. So what plane is she existing on? You know,
Yeah,
um, I don't know. Is purgatory like? Are you still kind of like on earth? Who knows? You know, like can you
right.
interact with people? I don't know. Or are all these interactions, you know, going on in her head? Because uh, a lot of, I mean, even when she's supposed to just be having like a normal, you know, going to her job and having some dinner and blah blah, blah, she's still seeing that ghoul that no one else
Hmm.
can see. So you just got
Right.
to wonder like how much of this is in her head and how much is really happening. And was she, you know, why is she already she's I think only supposed to be in her 20s, maybe 30, and she's already estranged from her parents, which would be very strange for a single woman back then. I also heard this described as the door, the hinged door between the 50s and the 60s, where we start like because I mean, there's a huge difference between the 50s and the 60s, and you know, I know
Yeah,
this is 62, right? But where we
yeah.
start thinking about things like hallucinogenics and psychedelic things and
Hmm.
different ways of living, and you know, I don't think in too many movies before this period would you even see a woman that on her own that's going to go have a job in another state, and you know, this just seems very progressive on a lot of
Yeah,
planes for what it is. But yeah, she's already strange, you know.
yeah.
So like it's strange before any of this happens. Even before she gets in the crash, she doesn't seem at all like the girls that she's with. You know, she just kind of sits there. She has this like she plays the vacant stare so well. You know, like
She
she's
really does.
kind of like this all the
I mean,
time.
especially because her character isn't like dim-witted or ditzy or anything like that. She even describes herself in the movie as being a realist and being very intellectual, and she went to college. And so when she has that vacant stare, it's really alarming. It's scary.
Yeah,
Like,
um, it almost feels like I mean, even before she gets in the crash, it feels like maybe she's trying to be normal by hanging out with other people. But I think she already had like that otherness about her,
yeah,
weirdness, whatever you want to call it. And so I don't know if that just, you know, carried over into purgatory or whatever. It
right.
just became worse. But there's already something about her that's kind of outside, you know?
Yeah.
So
I also wrote down in reference to her soul and her organ playing that that maybe all the shots we get of people smiling when she's playing the organ is to signify that she has this beautiful gift that she should be sharing with the world, if we're going back to that whole like purgatory, heaven theme, like this is a gift that you got from God so that you could share it with people and like make them feel something. And is that her way of sharing an experience with others, since she can't really seem to share any other kind of normal day experiences with people? And I wondered, so I can't tell if the movie is trying to say that she's being punished or if she just died. You know what I mean? If she is going through all these things, like, we're giving you this chance to take your vows, you're working at a church, share your soul, you know? So that those were the kind, I'm pretty much convinced that like she was just dead this whole time after the car accident. But is she also being punished? Or is it more just matter of fact, you're dead?
Well, I mean, if anything, that, like I had brought up about possibly maybe her, I mean, I said maybe asexual, but maybe something, like I said, for her to be estranged from her parents at such a young age back then, something, like she's either had like trauma in her life or there's something about her that's just different. I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's something she should feel shameful for, especially what if she is homosexual, something.
Well,
She's
it
not.
seemed like everyone's trying to make her feel shameful for not wanting to share in experiences with them.
But I mean, for her to be so like straight up about, yeah, I'm going to work in a church, but this is just a business.
Yeah.
They pay my wages, and people are like, oh, and I agree, you're right. I think, especially back then, people would see that as a gift from God, and you're going to work in a church. And first of all, you're a single woman. You should be thankful for getting such a wonderful job, right? And
Yeah.
I just think something has already alienated from her parents, the church, other people. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I agree with you. I believe she also died in the car accident. And then I think from the moment, sorry if I'm assuming most people have seen this, but we said we were going to be spoilery. But
Yes.
I believe from the moment that her dress changes and she comes and looks back over, she is now like in purgatory or something. But
Yeah.
also, though, is she not supposed to have gone to purgatory? Because this ghoul starts coming for her right away. So
Hmm.
if it's a ghoul in that very hellish landscape, is she going to hell? Does hell want her? Why? What did she do? Just because she didn't want to share her organ playing ability? That's pretty
Right.
harsh. Boy, I'm going to hell then for sure. You know. Um,
Yeah. I
but
think it's just because she didn't want to share an experience that she didn't want to like make other people better, you know? And I guess maybe that's the point.
I think she was totally over other people for whatever reason. I mean, I get it, but I'm like,
I really
guys,
related to
yeah,
her.
like I'm
Watching this,
older than
I was
her.
like, oh my God, is that
Oh my
me?
God, that's me.
Minus all
I'm
the
going to
talent.
yeah, totally, totally. I was like, I mean, I totally get her. Like, you guys need to
Yeah.
leave her alone.
Yeah, when she gets to the church in Utah and talks to the minister, he's telling her they've got like a nice little breakfast thing planned for her in the parish so she can get to meet people and know them. And she's like, do we really need to do all that? Can we just skip that and go right to the organ playing? And he says, my dear, you can't live in isolation forever. And he said, what will the women in the parish think?
Yeah.
And she says they should only care that she's a good organist.
I mean, straight up,
That's me.
sister. Yeah, me
100%
too.
me.
It's me too. And I'm sure people think that I shouldn't be that way, but I've been married twice. I've had my kids. I've done my time. And I don't mean that meanly. I wouldn't trade my kids for anything. But at 50, I got to be on my own and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, she must have something happened to make her figure that out at such a young age. But I mean, I totally feel her. So, but I think for what was it, 60 years ago now? I think that that might have been kind of strange, but
Maybe she was just lucky enough to kind of already have her own independence just based on the way she grew up because she got to go to college, and she just liked it and didn't have to deal with anyone and she didn't want to.
And she said, like, she didn't just like, it seems like she had a master's or something. She had some sort of advanced training, I think. I think she was like
Hmm.
at college for a while. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
think this is obviously what she wanted to do with her life. And I think it just kind of works out like, where else are you going to play an organ? You're going to go play
Yeah.
it in the church. You know what I mean? Like, I
Right.
don't know what, it's not like it's in the orchestra or anything. I don't know what she would have been aspiring to. And obviously she was great at it. While
Yeah.
we're on the minister, didn't you think that was a little abrupt of him? Like, he just fires her because she's playing some song that just sounded like organ music to
Yes.
me.
That
Like,
was very abrupt. I was mad at him. Um,
me too.
trying to trying to look at my note. Oh, he asks her if she has no soul because of the song that she's playing. I
Like,
don't understand. I guess it just sounded a little too bombastic for a church setting. I don't know if he thought that she was overcome by the devil or what. 'Cause he just comes over and he's like, "You're fired." And she's in a daze, because in that scene, she's kind of overtaken by the ghoul. And when she comes to, all of a sudden the minister's like, "You're fired." And she doesn't say anything. She just leaves the church. But you could tell that she's confused and really sad. She looks hurt. And I'm sure she's scared because of the visions that she was seeing while she was playing the organ. I don't know if she even understood like what she had been playing. So, yes, it was very abrupt and I was mad. And then he says that the church isn't turning its back on her and he hopes that she'll come back to church still, but that he has to fire her.
yeah, like, oh, yeah, dude, I'll get right on that. Like, screw
Yeah.
you. You know what I mean? Like, and he
Yes.
didn't even really,
Ask her like what was going on or anything.
no, he's just going to, he knows this girl moved there, has nobody. He's putting up her, or no, I don't know if he was putting up her room and board. I'm not sure on that. He might have been. But I don't think she just told him she got a room or whatever. He asked her if she needed a
Yeah.
place to stay. And what, he's just going to turn this girl out in literally the middle of the Utah salt flats? Like,
Yeah.
where is she in this little podunk
Is she
town?
gonna find
Like,
another organ to
like
play on?
right. Like, she hasn't even started there. She was just still practicing. And like, now you're already going to turn her, maybe, like, hey, maybe write her up. Like, hey, we can't,
Yeah.
this is your written warning. Like, you have to play what's in the book. And the book that
Yeah.
she closes and takes with her is like greatest hits of the organ or whatever. Um, so I don't know if she was just playing something in her mind or what we heard playing wasn't what she was really playing, but she wasn't. She was literally just sitting there playing the organ. So it's
Yeah.
not like she's not singing like devil lyrics,
Right.
or I don't know what could be, what organ music could be so offensive that it's an automatic firing.
Fireable.
And
Yeah. Totally. I mean, I don't know. Different times.
yeah, I guess maybe I'm just not up on my organ, you know. So
No, nor I. Yes, and we kind of skipped over when Mary's just actually driving to Utah. But that's when she first starts seeing the visions of the man in her window, who we keep referring to as a ghoul. I actually don't know if that's even how they're credited, but that's what they look like. They look like ghouls, They don't necessarily look like zombies or ghosts, or they look like worldly. So,
I think when in that interview with her, I think she also called them ghouls. And one thing I was going to bring up at the end, but I'll say now, is George Romero. This is her story. I'm just going to tell you what she said. George Romero saw this at a screening, went home and wrote Night of the Living Dead, even cast a blonde girl that looked somewhat like her.
oh wow.
But then once Night of the Living Dead came out, she said she started seeing the interviews he was giving, and people were straight up asking him, "Did you were you influenced by Carnival of Souls?" And he's like, I've never even seen that. I don't know what you're talking about." And she said she was just kind of hurt because she thought
Oh,
he was like a friend of hers or whatever. So for whatever reason, he wanted to distance her, maybe because they were fast moving in this movie, so there's that difference. But otherwise, with that whole black and white aesthetic and everything, it doesn't
yeah.
look all that different. You know what I mean?
Right.
But So yeah, I don't know. But anyway, he also called,
Interesting.
he did never use the word zombies either for Night of the Living Dead. He called them ghouls, and she thinks that's where he got it from. So I don't know. I think ghoul, because they're not really and you know, George Romero's always said like the people put the word zombies on Night of the Living Dead. Like he didn't put the word zombies on Night of the Living Dead. And
Right.
back then, you know, zombies wasn't really a thing. So
Right.
they called them ghouls, and I think he looks very ghoulish. I think
He
that just
does.
aesthetically, that just describes. I think we nowadays we would probably call him a zombie, but they don't really like move and act like zombies. I know there's all kinds of zombies. I get that, but these
Yeah.
like ghouls seem to me, in my mind, I think are more like ghostly, and to me that's
Yeah.
what these seem more like.
They seem
Ghost.
more like supernatural, I guess, where zombies seem more like scientific or something,
Yeah.
sci-fi.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Well, because these unlike a zombie, they can appear and disappear. They can, you know, they're kind of like ethereal in that way,
mm-hmm.
you know. So I think we tend to call the undead with the heavy makeup and the black eyes
Yeah.
and all that. I think we tend to want to call them zombies, but these don't. They're not zombies in here,
They're not
but
trying to
they're not.
eat brains.
No, but they're not like ghosts necessarily either. I think ghoul is like, to
Mhm.
me, that's just like the perfect name for what I think
Yeah,
that they are, you know?
totally.
Which,
Especially if it is purgatory. That makes sense. Like, you're not going up or down. We're keeping you here at this
yeah.
abandoned carnival.
Well, and two, it's like eventually he's like, I'm taking you down, but I'm gonna let you suffer a little bit longer almost. Because like in for the hour I would say that we get to see her in purgatory, it's pretty
hmm
hellish for her. I mean, imagine if
Yeah.
people couldn't see you or hear you, or I don't know, that would just
Yes.
be absolutely horrible. There's I don't want to jump ahead, but there's like the great scene where she goes into the dress shop, which I absolutely loved.
Yeah.
And hold on, I got to kill a mosquito. I'm
Record
not.
heat.
Yeah, I no more mosquito bites for me this year. I'm one of those people that like, you know, they say
You
that
taste good.
yes, like there's
Me too.
DNA and all that. It's like
Yeah.
there could be 100 people and I will be the one covered in
Same.
mosquito bites.
Wow.
I'm just,
Another thing we have in common.
yeah, we're both
We're
so sweet.
delicious.
Yes, we are. Totally, totally. But anyway, there's this great scene where she goes into a dress shop and a sales clerk waits on her. And when she comes back out of the dressing room, suddenly no one can see her. So I would just think that you would be like, what is going on? You know what I mean? That would just be
Yeah.
so unsettling. So
Yeah, it is really unsettling. I guess that too could support that she did actually survive the accident and this is her between like life and death. But it's just so this could all just be happening like in her subconscious like as she's dying, but because time is a construct that doesn't matter at that point. You know what I mean? This could all just be
yes.
happening like in a couple of minutes instead of the hour and 18 minutes that we're seeing it in. So it's
Yeah,
just,
I mean, it really could be that, or that hour and 18 minutes is how long it took them to hook the car up to that winch and get it out of the water when you see the closing scene, which I won't spoil right at this moment. But maybe that's all real time of how long that took. If you believe that she was dead the whole
yeah.
time, then maybe that, but I don't, yeah, it could be. But I mean, she, in her mind, she goes through several days, you know, or at least three or
Right.
four, it seems like, or maybe a
Yeah.
week or so. But yeah, there's nothing to lock you into like this is for sure. Like she's
Exactly.
alive or she's not alive. In fact,
And
I think
sometimes that's really frustrating. But with this, I think it's just kind of like magical,
yeah,
personally.
yeah. No, I agree. I
Because it
agree.
just keeps making you think. Because I was doing that last night. I was brushing my teeth, and then I was like, wait a minute. Also, this. This
Yeah.
scenario could also be pointing at this idea, you
That's
know?
what I
So,
said. Like I think you can watch it many times, even knowing what the outcome, it doesn't matter because you can see it different, you know, every time you
yeah,
watch it. So
exactly. So after she drives into Utah and sees a scary man in her windows and drives off into a ditch, she arrives at her new apartment and we meet Miss Thomas, the landlady, which is fun. I like that it's a landlady instead of a
Mhm.
landman. And she's kind of cute too. I just like her
Yeah,
personality. She's
me
a
too.
total character. Um, and when Mary goes to her room to unpack, she sees the man outside her window again, the ghoul. But when she goes to look out the window, she doesn't see him. So she smiles down at her organ music that
As you
first night in
do.
her apartment. Yes. And then after that is when she goes to church, as we discussed. And I did forget to say that while she was playing that first time in the church, the minister is telling one of the other women that Mary's playing can stir the soul. So that's another kudos to her organ playing. And then after that, after her first couple of hours practicing, is when she gets taken to this carnival by the minister who offers her a ride. And I think I might have missed something. I don't remember like why she wanted to go see this abandoned carnival, if somebody had brought it up
I think
and just intrigued
he,
her.
I forget where he said he was going. But I don't, it wasn't to Saltaire, right? That was the name of that place, Saltaire. It wasn't to there, I think, but he's like, I'm going to wherever. Do you want to go along? And then I think she's like, she asked about what is that place out in the whatever. And then he's like, oh, you don't want to go there, because she's like, oh, can we go there? And I think she talked him into stopping, but he
Hmm.
doesn't want to like go in. I guess there's like a fence around it or something, but she seems like really compelled to go there for whatever reason we don't know yet.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if someone had brought it up or if she'd just seen it in the distance or
Well, she
what, but
saw
I
it
can
driving in, and that's what
recall.
made her drive off the
Okay.
road, right? And then like she crashes her car, which seems totally disabled, and all of a sudden she's able to like back it up for some reason and get out of
Yeah.
there. And that
Yeah,
interview
because she
that
goes
I
into a ditch, not like
right,
super fast or anything, but still.
it was a 4 foot drop. In that interview that I watched with her, she's like, that was a mistake. She said, the salt flats, I guess, like when you're there in real life, I've never been there, but everything is one color, so you don't have any depth perception, she said. So she was
Mm.
driving and she meant to just pull off the side of the road and ended up falling 4 feet in the car, and that they actually show that. And I guess the cameraman who was in there with her ended up having to go to the hospital. I guess he got hurt pretty bad. She was fine. But then all of a sudden, right, like you see this happen, and then all of a sudden she's like somehow manages to put it in reverse and get out of there. But I mean,
Yeah.
she was so mesmerized by this place that it actually makes her, and plus she keeps recalling it in her mind, and
Yes.
she was just upset. I don't know why she couldn't just drive herself there, but she decided to have the priest take her there for whatever reason, but then he refuses to go in or whatever, and I don't
Hmm.
think really gave her any answers that she was looking for. But it was
No.
it was a
He just
truly
basically
creepy.
is like, it's illegal to go in there. And
Yeah,
she's like,
okay,
oh, okay.
whatever.
And during that scene, we see the ghoul. She doesn't, but we start to see him in his own little scenes here and there, just kind of like wandering around the carnival or just kind of strolling around town. So,
She throws that rock when she does go back to by herself. She throws that rock in what is now water when there was no water there before, and
yeah.
it shows the ghoul laying in the water. She does not. So I don't know if she doesn't see the water, doesn't see him, whatever.
Yeah, it
But
seems like she doesn't see him in that scene, but we
mm,
do.
so creepy. Oh.
It is really creepy. It's very aesthetically pleasing.
But weird things
Um,
start happening. Like it's a fun house. You could tell, or part of it used to be a fun house, and like
mhm.
things start like moving on their own. The slide comes down the slide. When
Oh
she's just
yeah.
standing there, and it's
I know.
like,
I was surprised that that didn't freak her out more.
I know.
I would
She,
have been freaked.
she's her usual like, oh wow,
Yeah, she's
self,
really dazed.
yeah.
Yeah. And throughout the movie, she's like clearly terrified to kind of deal with this on her own. And so she keeps trying to get men to help her, and they won't, which is really
Yep.
sad and frustrating to watch. But in that scene, she's like, I'll go there myself if I must, because
Yep.
she is convinced that she just needs to face it, and then she'll be able to take care of whatever it is. But then
Yeah,
nothing happens in that scene when she goes to the carnival by herself. She just wanders around and she feels kind of satisfied that she did what she needed to do after the doctor basically, told her that he thinks it's like a mental breakdown. She's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go face this. And then all these issues are going to go away, hopefully. I'm going to stop disappearing out of existence. All right. So getting back to the storyline of her in the apartment, Miss Thomas offers to bring her supper because Mary forgot to eat supper, after going to the carnival with the minister. And so the landlady's going to bring her some supper later. And she's taking a bath. And then there's a knock at the door. And she assumes that it's the landlady bringing her supper. So she goes to the door. And it's not the landlady. It's this really creepy guy named John Linden. Tammy's making a disgusted face right now,
I
listeners.
just hate this guy so much. And if you don't, if you don't watch this movie at all, just search up that guy, a clip of him, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I've never seen a worse human being in my life. I swear to God, he's just
very creepy and greasy and just intrusive.
lecherous.
Yes, he's got that creepy glint in his eye. And ugh. So
and
he's basically forcing his way into her apartment, and she's just in a towel.
Yes.
And she has to repeatedly ask him to step out so she can put a robe on. And he finally gets the hint. He just keeps trying to talk over her and force his way in. And she's like, I need you to get out of my apartment.
Which then he just doesn't. He steps into the hall, but the door is still open. And so he's watching her get out of her towel. They don't show anything. She puts a robe on, then drops her towel. There's no nudity or anything in this movie, but
he's making eyes like he's got one over on her because he sees the towel drop to the floor.
Right. That's so gross. But I mean, he's barely, I don't even know if he even introduced himself, and he's already you need me. You want to go out with me. When can I take you out? You want to go out with me. And it's like, dude, shut up.
Yeah,
he's so gross.
He interrupted her bath because he overheard her talking to the landlady that she hadn't eaten supper, and then tries to force his way into her apartment to ask her to go out and eat with him. And then
this is how I feel about direct IMs. You're interrupting my bath, and I hate that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You do not have a right to come into my personal space and be so invasive. And he just was not getting the hint. And I think she was being a very demure, proper lady, and she never raised her voice.
She was also firm. He just kept interrupting her and talking over her, and she was like, no, I don't want to go to supper with you. I have plans by myself tonight.
But he had no respect for her, so that meant nothing to him, unfortunately. Yeah. She basically had to shut the door in his face.
Yeah.
So.
She had to tell him 3 times. So that's our first introduction to that sleaze. Gross. And then Mary later goes outside of her apartment to look down the staircase. I think probably because she's like, where's supper?
Yeah.
And she sees the ghoul again, but this time the ghoul chases her up the stair, or he comes running up this, not running maybe, he comes up the stairs, and she locks herself in her apartment, terrified.
Yes.
And then the landlady ends up coming upstairs and giving her supper. And this interaction, I think, is just so cute because Mary's telling her, who's the man in the hall? He's chasing me. And you can see that Miss Thomas is getting really freaked out. She's like, look, I already have a hard enough time sleeping at night as it is. Don't start telling me this stuff. She doesn't want to believe her, but she's freaked out anyways. But when she goes to look, she doesn't see anybody. Yeah. And confirms that for Mary.
But the way that she went to look, you could tell a small part of her kind of believed Mary. I mean, Mary was pretty convincing with how scared she was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then in the morning, Mr. Linden comes over again with his coffee, and Mary's kind enough to let him in, because she needs her coffee. That's understandable. I totally relate to that.
Yes, me too.
And she basically tells him that later on too, when he's like, well, you seemed really nice this morning. She's like, yeah, I needed coffee.
But coffee's not all. Of course, he brings a pint with him too that he wants her to drink.
Yes.
At like 7:40 in the morning, because her alarm goes off, and within like a minute he's knocking on her door. It's like, I heard your alarm go off. I brought coffee and a little something extra. It's like, dude.
That is so creepy. I didn't even notice that he said that he heard her alarm go off.
Yes. Like, what?
Stop listening to everybody and
What?
everything.
Like, because from the outside, this house looks really big, but like, they're supposed to be the only two boarders in it. What are they in two rooms that share a wall? Or like, how did he hear her alarm go off?
Yeah, he's across the hall.
So must be the world. It just looked like a regular alarm clock to me, but must be the world's loudest alarm clock. But, or maybe he was already outside the door being creepy. Who knows? Because he was like right there with the coffee and 2 cups and the pint ready to go as soon as she got out of bed. So I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah.
And again, in the scene, she drinks her coffee and then she's like, okay, bye. Thanks. And he's like trying to push her again.
But they're sitting, so they sit together down on the couch, but she's on the side in like the corner with the arm, and then he's kind of like in the middle of the couch. He keeps leaning closer and closer, and she's like leaning back, trying to get away from him. And he's like literally, by the end of that conversation, like on top of her. And she's like, okay, I got to go to work.
Yes.
And he finally leaves.
Yeah, with a lot of persistence again. It's really gross and annoying. And during that conversation, she does make a comment about how in the dark, you can't see things the way they really are. But then in the daylight, everything kind of falls back into place. And, I think she's referring to, obviously, the night before when she was terrified and she keeps seeing this ghoul man in the dark. So that was an interesting line.
I think she's still trying to convince herself that he's not real, even though it's getting getting harder and harder to believe that he's not real because he's appearing more and more frequently. And now he has actually come into her space. Before she was seeing him kind of like from afar outside of her car, but now he's actually in the same space that she's in.
Right.
And he's like getting closer to her. So
yes. And they do a really great job with that throughout the movie and keeping their relationship tense.
Yeah.
I think. And just him creeping closer and closer to her throughout.
Because the next time after that we see him is at the water fountain, right? Where he's literally like within 4 inches of her. So, I mean, he's literally getting closer. And you just know, like, oh, man, one of these next couple times is going to be the time.
Yes. Oh, yes. And that's right. She didn't have to go to work because she was planning to go shopping all day. Yeah. She was very excited about going shopping. I thought it was adorable. Because Mr. Linden was trying to, Mr. Linden was trying to get her to hang out. She's like, I'm going shopping today.
He had just said he had to go to work at his warehouse where he makes good money, by the way.
Yeah.
So what? He was going to call in sick and I don't know.
Right.
All day. I don't know, but yeah.
Yes. And so this was the scene that you were talking about earlier where all of a sudden people stop being able to see her or hear her. And you can tell she's kind of running around frantically. The sound is gone, and then I think organ music maybe comes into play during the scene after it's been silent for a while. And then when she reaches a park, all of a sudden you can hear birds singing. And then she realizes that she can hear things again. And she looks relieved for a second. But then when she's taking a drink from the water fountain, she looks up to see the ghoul again right next to her face.
Yep.
That's when she runs into a doctor and he grabs her and she's freaking out. And he says, "You've had a fright. Hysteria won't solve anything. Now control yourself." I'm like, excuse you, mister? Of course, women in their hysteria.
Yeah. Oh, well, because I really thought if I got hysterical, everything would be great. You know, like, duh, dude,
I'm doing it
what?
on purpose.
And
Yes,
she's
but he
like,
did.
but I just, and then of course the man turns, well, maybe he never was the ghoul, but now when we see him, it's just a regular guy who was cute, cute
He
old man.
was a cute little old man. He's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you.
I just wanted to get a drink of water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is so funny. But the guy who had grabbed hold of her is a doctor, so he offers to take her to his office so that he can make sure she's okay and see what's going on. Um, so that's when we get the the scene where they're talking and she's like, "Wow, I must have been talking for an hour already." So we know that she's basically had a therapy session with this doctor, and told him her whole story, starting with the car accident. And that's when he starts to tell her that he thinks it's probably an emotional break of some sort. But he also says, like, I'm not fully qualified. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a doctor, but
Yeah.
this is what I would think it probably is. So I appreciated him not, pretending like he knows everything. So that was nice.
Yeah.
And that's when she convinces herself that she needs to go back to the carnival and face her fears. And the doctor tries to tell her not to go by herself, to go with somebody. And she's like, nope, I've got this, because she's a realist and a competent person, and if she needs to go by herself, that's what she's going to do.
Well, she already tried going with a priest and that didn't work out. So
Right.
she's probably like, forget it. I'll just do it on my own.
Yes. And they also have, this really deep conversation about how she likes to be alone and doesn't desire the company of others or care about joining in on their experiences. Um, and that was something that really hit me.
You know what she almost seems like a little bit, which they would not have had a word for back then, but almost maybe like she's on the spectrum, like might maybe
Mm,
autistic a little bit or something.
that's
Just with
another
she
lens.
doesn't like the tactile touching. She doesn't like fit. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem to know how to have social norms.
My
She seems
God.
kind of fascinated by watching people, but not feeling any desire to be a part of them or really understanding their interactions with each other. You never really see her have an, except maybe the doctors the closest, you never really see her have a normal interaction with anyone through the entire movie. She gets talked at a lot where she'll
Yeah.
just nod, and you have a lot of scenes of people telling her things, but the only time we see her probably stringing more than 5 sentences together is when, or maybe even 5 words together, is when she's talking to the doctor. She probably felt safe and clinical and understood a relationship with a doctor in a way that she doesn't
Yeah.
understand relationship with other humans.
Yeah.
So
Totally. That is another great, it's another thing. It's just another lens that you can look at this whole thing through. And I think it also makes sense. Now I'm
which
wondering if I'm on the spectrum.
well, if we're both on the spectrum, then, because I totally get her, but
Yes.
I mean, I think we can see that 60 years later. I don't even think they had a spectrum back then, but
Right.
I think people were, the spectrum wasn't invented in the last 20 years. We just gave it a name. There were people on the
Exactly.
spectrum back then. We mostly just lumped them all together and called them the R word. But
Right.
I think,
Or
now we understand,
hysterical.
or hysterical. Yeah. That word they knew for sure for a good
Yeah.
probably 100 years by that point. But yeah, I mean, it definitely existed. And I just because we didn't have a name for it, I mean, there definitely were people, plenty of people like that, I'm sure. So.
Yeah. I did wonder, I don't know if this was just a coincidence, but when she's strolling around the carnival by herself, she stops by a sign for a minute and there's a woman painted on the sign. And to me, they look the same, like she had the same hairstyle and she's just like standing next to it for a second. Did you notice that?
I noticed the picture, but I didn't think about them. I think I was just looking at the picture. I know exactly what you're talking about because I love that style. I love
Yeah,
those
that
like
art style.
pinup looking girls. So
Right.
I think I was looking at that, and I don't think all the time I've watched it, I've ever looked at the two of them together, but I could see that. I mean, she kind of had that. Say, now that you say that, I could see if I had bothered to look at her also, but I think I
Yeah.
was just looking at the painting. So
I don't know what that would signify, except like you belong at the carnival or you're fated to land here. I'm not sure, but it was just something that I noticed, and I usually don't notice stuff like that, to
Well,
be honest.
it could be because they hung on that scene a little while. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like it wasn't just because there was two women painted there and the camera goes right over the first one, but then she kind of stops and you do see the other one for a beat,
Yeah.
it for a second or two. So, no, I see what you're
Just
saying
long
too.
enough to think that maybe it means something.
Well, I mean, who knows? I'm sure that whole carnival scene means something, but I can't tell you what. I mean, something's going on there because she's not bothered by this weird stuff that's happening, and
Yeah.
who knows what she's thinking in her head too. Maybe that she did see herself in that woman, like, or maybe that's the woman I never was. I never could join in the fun and be happy and be in my bathing suit and be all happy and playing with other people,
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Very interesting. Well, she leaves the carnival and goes back to her apartment. And she happens to run into Mr. Linden outside of the apartment. So they just happen to walk in together. He's asking her out to dinner again. And she's like, I don't want to. And he's like, what about dancing? And she's like, I'm not one for dancing. And he's just like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like,
Well,
you
at
don't
first she's
like
like,
doing anything.
I have to practice, right? She told him she had to practice.
Yeah.
And she wasn't going to go with him. And then, oh wait, now is this the time she sees the ghoul and gets really scared and then agrees to go with him, right? Am I getting ahead of you? I'm sorry.
No, 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 no. You're fine. No, she doesn't see him in this instance, but as he's talking to her, this is when he's like, "You seem so cold. You were so much friendlier this
Oh,
morning." And
so
she's
good.
like, "Well, I needed company this morning." And he jokes that maybe she also needs company tonight. And then he makes the comment, "It's better than being alone." And that's when you see the change in her eyes. She's like, "You're right." She's afraid of being alone,
Yeah.
and having to face the school by herself. So that's when she finally gives in to like going to the diner with him.
Yeah,
Which
because he
is,
waits for, no, that's right. Because she does go to work, but he says, all right, she's like, meet me at, I forget where she's,
mhm,
meet me at wherever. So she did go to, yeah, she didn't want to be alone. And she did agree to, I think, yeah, go to get something to eat with him.
yes. But she's not one for dancing, so that doesn't happen. But yeah, he goes and he picks her up at the church after she gets fired. She doesn't mention this to him or anything, and she's still kind of in a daze, and she's still like that at the diner too, and
Well,
he's
plus
making all these rude comments.
he makes this, like, I don't know how long she was in there, but he makes a point to say, I waited a long time for you. Well, she just got fired, so she probably was supposed to be up there for even longer. So I don't know if she was just got lost in a trance and we just don't
Yeah,
understand what necessarily happened in there. And maybe she was there actually in that trance longer than she was supposed to be. But I mean, she was fired and out of there within like a minute or two. So I don't
right.
know how long she was in her trance or whatever, but supposedly he had to wait for her. But okay.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That is interesting. Um, yeah, and then when they're at the diner, she's all spaced out and she's clearly just like not feeling well or secure or sane. And he's being a total dick,
Oh,
listeners.
I felt so
Huge
much for
douche.
her. She's sitting, okay, there's people all around being loud and she's in a bar, okay? So she has a beer poured for her, which I don't think she ever asked for. I think she never touches it. And he right away starts complaining about, I bought you this beer and this is how you're going to act, that kind of jerky thing. Like,
Yeah.
I did something for you, so boy, you better do, the least you could do is act like you want to be here. It's like, dude, how many times did I tell you I didn't want to be here?
Yeah,
But
you like
like,
forced me to come here,
yeah,
basically. Yeah,
he
and
like,
then she eventually gives in and takes a drink and has like this disgusted look on her face.
mm-hmm.
Like, I hate this scene so much, everything
I do
about
too.
it. She
Yeah, because
starts to get really scared and vulnerable, and she's basically begging him like to not leave her alone because she's so scared. And when he catches on to that's like a fear for her, he latches on and starts making her beg for it. And it's
exploits
really
it.
gross.
And he makes her stay in there a little longer because he's like, oh, you don't like the music, you don't like the beer, you don't like it. And she's like, I liked that song. And he's like, oh, well, if you like it so much, I'm going to go put it on again. And that's when he goes up to the jukebox and meets one of his friends or whatever, and is like, he's kind of like ribbing him, like, you get a score with the dame or whatever. I'm going to go introduce myself to her or whatever. She doesn't look too happy to be here with you or whatever, which that was true.
True that.
Yeah. And he's like, no. And then he goes back to table, and I just felt, it's just like painful to watch, because I'm really invested in her at this point, and to just see her being treated so badly, and she's she's only there because she's so scared that even his company is better than nothing. And it's just heartbreaking to watch at this point, because it's really starting to get to her. So
and she's like apologetic, and I'm like, nah, don't apologize.
And the more like that she is, the worse he becomes. Like, dude, here is your chance to redeem yourself. She's obviously not in a good way. Take care of her. You are kind of, you're kind of responsible for her at this point, because she's fragile. You forced her to go out with you. You could go one of two ways here, and you choose to be a douche. And I'm just done with him at that point, pretty much. Yeah. So, yeah.
I was done with him from second one.
I was too, but at the it's absolute cringe to watch him at this point. Yeah. I just cannot stand him. So.
Yep. And then after this,
one more. I watched a couple of like YouTube reviews of this movie just to see what different people were saying. And one of them that I watched, this guy, and he has like 1 million followers, does all these. I forget who it was, or I would credit him. He does tons of movie reviews, but he straight up says this is the worst character in movie history. That guy, he's like, I love this movie so much, but he says, I think they need to come out with a cut where that guy's taken out. And he's like, well, I mean, I know he serves his purpose in the movie, but he says, it's just, I get a pit in my stomach when I go to watch this movie, because I know I have to watch those scenes with him. So I think if you've never seen this, you'd have to watch it to understand what we're talking about. Like, how can a person be this bad? But he just is. I don't know how else to explain it. He just is, So,
expertly crafted worst person ever, so like it literally makes me feel physically ill watching the scene. And so I think it does serve a purpose, and it does seem like really intuitive for that time period to put something like this in their movie. I hate it, but I think it should be there.
Well, when I was reading a lot of the comments on the YouTube video, that's what people were saying. Like, we totally agree, but it wouldn't be that. You need this character to just help her on her trajectory, really. Mm-hmm. It just to show, I think, her desperation at that point, that she, because she never says anything. We don't ever know how she's feeling. So I think all we have to go by is her actions. And the fact that she is because she does seem like a smart person who is really over people and can take care of herself up until this point. But something inside of her after that last sighting of the ghoul, I think, has just broken. And she is just like, wow, I'm not solving this on my own. And I may have to let a person come into my space, because I may not be okay. And you just see that transition in her, and you just feel so bad for her. Because, I mean, at least I do. And I do.
Yeah, I don't see how anyone could not.
I don't care about her, like, whatever. I just love her character, and I'm just so invested in her by this point. Well, after I saw this the first time, I've always been invested in her, but just by, with each watch, like, when it gets to this point, you just know the desperation that she's feeling, and you just feel for her,
Yeah, and she's, gone out of her way to say that she's a realist and this reliable person, so she's freaked out. You know what I mean? Because this really weird thing is happening to her that she can't explain.
And it's just so, like, the way that this jerk, like, just wastes her. Like, he could have, like, had he been nice to her, I mean, I don't know, but, like, I think he could have at least been friends with her. They, could have, like, didn't seem like they, he had a job there, but I mean, he knew she was new and didn't know anybody, and he could have treated her a lot differently. I don't think he had to go right to douche,
Yes.
But he did.
Right away, he was like, someone who doesn't know me, I'm going to take advantage of them.
Yeah. because nobody else would want to go out with me because I've probably burned through all the women in this little town. And
Right.
he's got to have a reputation. So I don't know.
Yep. And he only gets worse because after she begs him to not leave, he's like, all right, let's get back to the apartment. Like as soon as he's got her in his clutches.
Yeah.
And she looks nervous, and they go back to the apartment and he's all over her trying to kiss her. And she's like, you know what? I thought I could do this, but I can't, not even to stay safe. So she's like, I need you to go.
I think a lot of women, I mean, I don't think we've all been in purgatory, but I think a lot of us have been in that situation where, you know what, maybe this wasn't such a great idea. And, you hope a guy would be like a gentleman or whatever.
Yeah.
He does not I think he deep down knew that she was bringing him there out of desperation. And I don't think he even saw her as a person, it's just like, yay, I'm getting in some pants tonight. Yes.
Yeah.
Score, and I finally conquered her. And the fact that he was so oblivious to her desperation is just painful to watch.
I know, it's terrible. And then when he is trying to kiss up on her, she sees the ghoul again and she starts losing her shit. And that's when he's like, wait a minute, what's going on? Now he's paying attention to her desperation because now he doesn't want to get involved with no crazy chick.
What a dick. I mean, even if you have any semblance of humanity, you would notice oh, I guess he was supposed to be falling down drunk though, because he was falling up the stairs and whatever. I mean, it looked like he only had a couple beers. Maybe he had his pint with him before that or something, but he seemed awfully drunk for the bar scene that we got to see. But anyway, I mean, he was acting sloppy drunk before that. But you think if you had any ounce of humanity in you, when you saw that change come over her, at least go get Mrs. What's her name and say, hey, I think this girl needs some help. You don't just be like, hey, I ain't deal with no crazy chick. He was just just
He's
leave her there. Yeah.
He runs out of there for how she could not get him to get the hell out of her apartment. He runs the hell out of there the second he thinks that she's crazy.
Or that she might actually have some needs herself because they weren't sexual or whatever, but she might actually need him. And all of a sudden I don't want to have anything to do with this now.
Right.
It's all about him.
He only wanted to fulfill his own needs. Yeah. And she's screaming and grabbing her hair that she doesn't want to be left alone. It's so sad.
And he just straight up turns his back and walks out. And then we get a view from the outside of the house that shows her just moving. You can hear her moving the furniture in front of the door and stuff. And then we find out the next day that she was up doing that all night. And it's just so sad.
It is really sad. What a dick. I hate John Linden. Well, at this point, she's done with everything. And she packs up and she's taken off. She leaves and runs into Miss Thomas, but doesn't say anything to her. And Miss Thomas makes some sort of funny joke about how she's going to charge her extra rent when she just leaves without saying a word or something.
Yeah.
But she's out of there.
She's like, I can't refund your money if you just up and leave like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's true. They didn't have a system in place the way we do today.
Whatever. She's just like, bye, I'm out of here.
She's totally dazed. And she gets in her car and all of a sudden her car is making these terrible sounds. So we see her go to a mechanic, and before the mechanic hoists the car up, he's like, do you want to get out of the car? And she's like, can I just stay in the car? And he's like, sure, lady, whatever you want. So this
starts a very weird part of the movie, I think.
Yes, it does. Yes, and this could go off into a whole other freaking scenario, of course, because she falls asleep in the car for what seems like one moment only. It looks like she just nods off and then is awoken by the presence of the ghoul again, who has walked into the mechanic shop. And she's hoisted up. She can't do anything. And then somebody starts turning the knob to bring the car down. But she doesn't get face to face with him because she rolls out of that car and runs away before she can get to the bottom. So
The
we know
mechanic,
she's freaked
it
out.
wasn't very long because the mechanic was getting ready to work on her car, and then I think he heard the bell out front. Somebody pulled up for gas or whatever. This is one of those like old time, like, you know how I remember, but you probably don't, when you pull up at the gas and they did it for you. And it was an, you know, usually there was a body shop and stuff there. This is one of those old timey things. So I think he just left for, because he sees her leaving and he's like, what the heck, you know, like,
Yeah.
so I don't think she was asleep for very long. But I think she was also, if she had been up moving the furniture all night, she was probably freaking exhausted at that point and
Yes.
was probably able to nod off quickly. But
Totally. Yeah. Which totally makes sense. Yeah. As to her nodding off for just a moment. The ghoul won't leave her alone. So then she's running away, running around town, and sorry, just trying to find my spot again in my notes. She's in a crowded area again, and again, all the sound disappears. No one can see her. No one can hear her, and she's at this bus station, like trying to get a ticket for the bus. The guy at the oh no, words are escaping me now. Tammy, help me.
ticket window.
Thank you. At the ticket window, can't see her or anything, but she
Yep.
hears an announcement over the loudspeaker, you know, which is the only thing that she's heard so far. And it's telling her about a bus that's arriving. So I think she's pretty excited about that, tries to run to the bus, finds it, runs in, and quickly runs back off. 'Cause that bus is filled with ghouls,
Ghouls.
and they are happy to see her.
Yeah,
But she was not happy to see them.
that was the
I just
bus to
feel,
hell, obviously.
yes, I feel so bad for her in the scene. She's so freaked out. She gets locked into the station by a man who can't see her, you know, it's just tragic, really.
Yeah, for sure.
And she's running down an alleyway screaming, "Why won't anybody hear me?" Like they're choosing to not hear her. And then she comes back to that same park outside of the doctor's office and she can hear birds singing again. So I thought that that was interesting that both times that this happened, it was like at that park and it was like natural sounds that brought her back.
Yep.
I don't
I
know
mean,
what
I'm
that
sure
means.
I'm sure there's something to that, but I don't know. Unless it was again that she was somewhere she felt safe. I think she felt, like I said, I think she felt safe with that doctor. So
Mm,
I don't know. I don't know for sure, but yes, like the two times that we see her rejoin reality from her nether world reality, wherever she goes to, where suddenly
yeah.
no one can see her, it's in that same place, and it's the like the bird song that brings her back. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always when she's like in town in crowded areas when she starts to disappear, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting that. And so then after she can hear again, she is back in the doctor's office. We see her in the doctor's office and she's talking to the doctor, and all of a sudden the chair turns around to reveal the ghoul,
Well,
not
I
the
think
doctor.
what's why
Yeah.
that's not weird is because the two times I was surprised he wasn't a psychiatrist, because it was like he would stay with it in his chair with his back turned to her while she would talk. It seemed like, you know, you see like those old movies. It seems like how the psychiatrist would do it. Like you would lay on the couch or whatever. They wouldn't be facing you while you were talking. So I know he
Yeah.
wasn't a psychiatrist, but she doesn't realize it's a ghoul in the chair at first, because this doctor seems to always talk to her with and it's a big tall chair, you know, where like the back is above his head, so
Yeah.
she can't really see who's sitting there. So I think she thinks she's talking to the doctor. I don't know. We don't see her go in there, so I don't know if she saw the doctor when she first entered or whatever. But yeah, this chair slowly turns around. Um, AKA like Norman Mrs. Bates style, and da da
Yeah.
da, it's the ghoul.
It's a good reveal.
Yeah,
And they did set it up because earlier he was turned away and he had apologized for having his back to her because he wanted to write down some notes.
right.
So they totally set that up for this scene, which is great. I love
Yeah.
that. Um, so once again, she's fleeing from the ghoul. Um, and all of a sudden she screams and wakes herself up and she's back in the car in the mechanic shop.
Yeah.
So apparently she did fall asleep. And so was that all a dream? I don't know.
And then are all the other sightings of the ghouls, are those dreams? You know, like what,
Yeah.
like this dream seems to perfectly match whatever this other world she's been, or did she not really fall asleep and she just had another one of her visions or what? I don't know what's happening to her, so it's hard to
Yeah.
say. We have no idea why she's slipping in between these two realities.
Right.
Because even if she was in purgatory now, like I said, I don't know how purgatory works, but I don't think you spend half the time there and half the time in reality. But I do believe
Mhm.
she's in purgatory. So I don't know. I just don't know.
Right, because we don't know if it's really reality. It's just her reality that she's coming up with in her weird
Because I mean, if she
dying
was
brain.
only like it seemed like if she did fall asleep, it would have been for only a minute or two. But yet, what took place, it was a lot longer than. Like she
Yeah.
had a whole afternoon going on in that time that she was supposed to be asleep. So, yeah.
Yep, and it's only going to get weirder because
Yep.
then she drives off and she goes back to the carnival by herself again. And there's organ music playing in the background again. And she's wandering around and she's looking out at the dry lake bed or river bed or whatever it's supposed to be.
And there are
Um,
some really beautiful shots. I do have to say the cinematography in this movie is just outstanding. And in that interview
yeah.
that I watched with her, she said that's like whoever that guy was, that's what they put their money into. And um, I guess this guy styled himself after Otto Preminger, which I know that name, but I don't think I know too much about him or his movies. But I guess that's the style they were going for. But I don't know,
Okay.
whatever. I think there's just some amazing, like it's so visually outstanding that even when there's just these shots of her literally just standing places, you're never bored because it's like a feast for your eyes. It looks so beautiful. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the cinematographer was Maurice Prather or Prather.
Does it say what
Uh,
else he did or?
yeah, but it's not anything that I recognize, of course, because Carnival of Souls is like one of the last things he was a cinematographer on. Um, so there's only a couple things here that even have pictures for the covers.
Well, maybe it's a missed opportunity because I think this guy, maybe he was something great and this was just at the end of his career. But I mean, it's almost like how how is the cinematography existing in a movie of this time and budget and genre? You know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah.
it looks so beautiful.
He
And you
has
can
worked,
tell.
he's worked a lot in like the sound department and camera and electrical departments and stuff like that, even more than cinematography. So I think he's still always been involved
Well,
with
he did an amazing
filmmaking.
job. So,
Yeah, but I agree. I love the cinematography. And after she looks out and everything's dry, then the next scene is a bunch of ghouls like under the water. So now there's water there again.
mhm.
And why am I moving around in my notes? It's not
And
smart.
it's them coming, like a really creepy scene of them coming up out of the water slowly.
Yeah.
I just think that was just a very. I love water. I love lakes. I love the ocean. I think it would be really terrifying to just be staring out over a lake and all of a sudden a group of people come walking out of there, especially ones that look
Yeah.
like that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
okay,
And then all
bye.
of a sudden, we get two Marys because there's one Mary kind of standing afar from all the ghouls, watching another version of herself dancing with the main ghoul. And they're all
Mm.
dancing around, but that version of Mary is dancing with the main ghoul that we've been seeing throughout the movie.
It's almost
And
like he was searching for his dance partner this whole time because all
oh,
the other girls are paired up. You know what I mean? And then
oh,
like there's him.
how romantic. Just kidding.
That's her idea of hell. She's doomed to be in a close proximity with a guy,
Yes.
hanging
Oh
on to
my
him
God.
forever and ever,
Yes. Amen,
twirling.
sister. It's terrible. And her face appears to be painted like theirs, right?
Yep.
The version of her that's dancing is also
Yeah.
ghoulish looking.
Yep.
And they're just spinning in circles. And there's the observer, Mary, who still looks normal, just watching them. And then all of a sudden, the ghouls all start to chase her, and they're all laughing. And they chase her out onto the shore, where she falls, and then they all just descend upon her. And we look up from her POV to see all the ghouls coming down on her and their hands reaching for her.
Yeah.
And then after that, there's a scene of the doctor and the minister at the carnival looking for Mary with the police. And they see where there are footprints in the shore. And then all of a sudden they disappear.
Yep.
And so that is interesting, because if this wasn't reality and she was in purgatory the whole time, why are we getting the scene of them looking for her? Or is that to throw us off? Or
And
was
why
she
are
alive?
there footprints in the sand? And it's like now she's been taken somewhere else. So
Yeah.
that lends to the argument that she was either existing in two worlds, or I mean, she was in reality some of that time, because these people really, like, unless no, you're right, because I mean, a lot of that other, like, I was going to say, oh, she interacted with the, like, landlady and stuff, but that could have been in her mind because we don't see her afterwards. But the priest and the police and the doctor, yeah, they're now.
Yeah.
So yeah, why are they seeing physical evidence that she was there if she never was there? You're right.
Yeah. Very interesting.
She may have been there physically and just never there mentally, but then where is she, like, physically, where is she now? Well, go ahead and say what happens then after that.
Well, next is just the ending, which is very abrupt, just like the beginning, where we're back in Mary's hometown. And in that river by the bridge where they had flown off in the car, we see a man discover the car with the three girls from the beginning, and he hoists it out with his little tow truck. And the girls are all dead, including Mary. Um, and that's the end. Then they're just like, end, bye.
Yep.
But it is, it's a shocking ending. I mean, even if you figured out what's going on, it's just like really frightening to see, I
Yes.
think.
Well,
The
because I
end.
think we don't want that to be the, I don't know. We don't want her, they don't want that to be the case. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but I mean, she's like gone now, so that only makes sense. But I think, yeah, it's just shocking ending. But it's
Yeah.
still, even though you see her in that car at the end, I still don't think it gives you an answer. Like, what have you just been watching for the last hour?
Right.
Oh,
I
like,
agree. And I'm sure on different days when I'm thinking about this movie, I'll come to different conclusions, you know, which
yeah.
is kind of the fun of it for me. But
I,
I am interested if the listeners have a definitive answer, that they think is the true answer. Feel free to share that with us on our Facebook group page or wherever you might follow us. We're on basically all the social medias, except we're not on X. We're not going there into that cesspool, but you can find us everywhere else. And I would be really interested to see what other people think.
I mean that genuinely. I'd be very interested to hear what other people think. I was so excited to talk about this movie because I think it's such a good movie to talk about. All movies are
Yeah.
great. Most movies are great to talk about. That's why I'm here. But I just think this one is one you can really have a conversation about, and
Yeah.
everybody's ideas are just well, that's always the case. Everybody's ideas are just as valid. But I think here, I think you could have 10 different ideas and there's no reason to think they're not all correct, the way that, and you see lots of movies that like leave ambiguous endings and all that. But I mean, I think this is like the OG. I think they did it completely right. And
Hmm.
I think it would be hard for someone to convince me that there is one answer to this movie. But
Yeah.
it's just neat to see how other people see things.
Right. And sometimes it's when you watch a movie and it feels ambiguous, it kind of feels like the filmmakers didn't know what they wanted to do with it. And so therefore, we'll just make it ambiguous and then it'll
Yeah.
be artsy and people will, project whatever they want on it. But that doesn't feel like the case here. It feels like there's so much to bite into. And all those different lenses that you brought to the discussion are also like interesting to me because I didn't think of any of those things
I
and
got
they could
those
all be valid.
I got those from watching what other people had to say. That's why I think it's so interesting. I also Speaking of artsy films, I also saw someone call this an A24 film 60 years before A24. And I could see that. I think it
Nice.
would fit. I think if he was ever going to remake it, I would hope it would be them because I think they
Oh
would do
yeah.
it right, but I think this is that, like, if I had to, like, who would you say, like, would make a movie like this now? I think you'd have to say A24, or you would
Hmm.
hate to see it go into the hands of anyone else because I think they're able to think outside the box. So,
Yeah.
and this is like, I don't, this Herc Harvey guy, like he had the juice. Too bad he never really did too much with it.
I know. That is a bummer.
But
But yeah.
it wasn't like horribly well received. He may not have ever even realized in his lifetime what he had done. And like I said, I think a lot of this appreciation now is we can see how amazing what he did was, but who knows? His contemporaries may have not saw him that way. This was
Yeah.
definitely on the fringe, I would think, for back then. And horror certainly wasn't. I mean, there was your drive-in horror, but you weren't getting a lot of mainstream horror. And this is definitely like a thinking man's movie. And I
Yeah.
don't think there was, we were starting to get them with Psycho and stuff like that, but it certainly wasn't the norm. And I think people saw these kind of movies as aberrant, where like, oh, if you're not going to make it schlocky, then why are you making this at all? We don't talk about those things. It just
Yeah.
wasn't what people, yeah, that's not cinema or theater, whatever. Like, horror is so widely accepted now, but this was probably just stayed on the fringe back then. So.
Right. Well, I'm glad that people appreciate it now at the very least. I know that I've only seen it twice now, but even after the first time I watched it, I felt like I was watching something really special. And this watch just like solidified that for me. So personally, I'm going to rate this movie a 9 out of 10. I mean, and I wouldn't be surprised if it eventually becomes a 10 out of 10 on repeat viewings because I just sort of really like it and I can't really find anything wrong with it. You know what I mean? When I'm actually thinking about it, it seems like very well constructed and like they knew what they were doing and what their intentions were when they were making this movie. But for now, I give it a 9 out of 10. What do you give it, Tammy?
I was thinking about this, and I guess I have, like, even if I knock it down to a 9.5, I have no reason to do that. I cannot. What? Because they had some choppy editing. They did. I mean, like, that's the only thing, but that's me really nitpicking, and
And
I
that
don't.
was normal back then,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
and like I said, what I think seemed choppy to me, like once I had heard her explain, we didn't have to have those opening credits at the time. We didn't have a studio. So once I hear those kind of things and realize this is, this guy's first attempt at this, and I'm not even going to hold that against him. So I, I think this is on my list of like just all-time great movies. I've admitted how many times I've rewatched it. I think that says a lot about it. I guess I have to give it a 10 because I cannot come up, and I've really thought about it, I cannot come up with a reason to ding it for anything. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Yes, I hate some of the characters. Yes, I find it confusing, but that's part of, that's just in the bones of the movie. It's not
Yeah.
anything to knock it down for. So I guess I'm giving it a 10 because I have
Nice.
no reason not to. So
Right. Well, I definitely don't fault you because right now I was trying to think, why am I not giving this a 10? But I already said the 9, so I'm going to stick to my guns for now, but
that,
just
I
watch
could
my
see that.
letterboxed.
I didn't watch this probably for the first time till I would say within the last maybe 10 years or so. And as you know, I'm 55. So I think I've just seen it many more times. If you had said, Tammy, rate this ever the first time I ever saw it, I might have been in like 8 or 9
Hmm.
range just because I had so many questions and didn't understand a lot about it. Now I've taken the time to research it, watch interviews, read a whole bunch of stuff about it, watch it
Yeah.
many, many times. And I just feel like I got a good handle on it. And knowing and understanding it better now, I would, in good conscience, cannot think of anything to knock it down for. So.
Nice. Well, you heard it here, listeners. Got a 9 and a 10 for
Our
Carnival of
first 10.
Souls.
Our first 10 on our podcast.
Woo! I need a little bell. Woo!
Ding, ding, ding,
All
ding.
right.
I'll leave that to the editor, which is Jessica.
Uh-oh.
No pressure.
So
It's part of, that's just in the bones of the movie. It's not
yeah.
anything to knock it down for. So I guess I'm giving it a 10 because I have
Nice.
no reason not to. So
Right. Well, I definitely don't fault you because right now I was trying to think, why am I not giving this a 10? But I already said the 9, so I'm going to stick to my guns for now, but just
I
watch
could
my
see that.
letterboxd.
I didn't watch this probably for the first time till I would say within the last maybe 10 years or so. And as you know, I'm 55. So I think I've just seen it many more times. If you had said, Tammy, rate this ever the first time I ever saw it, I might have been in like 8 or 9 range just because I had so many questions and didn't understand a lot about it. Now I've taken the time to research it, watch interviews, read a whole bunch of stuff about it, watch it
Yeah.
many, many times. And I just feel like I got a good handle on it. And knowing and understanding it better now, I would, in good conscience, cannot think of anything to knock it down for. So.
Nice. Well, you heard it here, listeners. Got a 9 and a 10 for
Our
Carnival of
first
Souls.
10. Our first 10 on our podcast.
Woo! I need a little bell. Woo!
Ding, ding, ding,
All
ding.
right.
I'll leave that to the editor, which is Jessica.
Uh-oh.
No pressure.
So that was our review of Carnival of Souls. Before we head out, I just want to give a monstrous mention to a fellow weirdo named Trey Whetstone of the Screaming Through the Ages podcast, as well as the new version of the horror movie podcast that they just rebooted recently. And Trey also guests on a bunch of podcasts all over the place, so you're likely to hear him at some point if you listen to horror podcasts. Screaming Through the Ages is Trey's first baby, and it is a bi-weekly podcast delving into various topics throughout the history of horror movies. That's his solo show, though he does have guests on occasionally, and I really enjoy his podcast because doing a solo show is really hard. Like, you have to have charisma, and you kind of need to know what you're talking about in order to keep people glued. And I think that he does that, like, better than any other solo podcaster that I've heard, to be quite honest. He's so
Seriously,
informative.
props to him because I've always wanted to do this. I could not do this without Jessica. I'll just say that right now.
Oh my
I mean,
God, me neither. I'd be terrible.
And I'm still the same me with all the same things to say. I just think it takes a lot. It really takes a special person to carry a show by themselves. So props to him for sure.
Lots of props to him. And the show also covers a wide variety of topics outside of horror, including video games, anime, and movies of all genres on occasion. But when he is focusing on horror and going through the history of it, it's really fun. Like, he's doing a folk horror series right now that I'm just eating up.
Oh,
So,
listen to that.
and he's young. He's like younger than me. And he has this crazy extensive historical catalog in his brain that I just can't believe. But he's also
even
a
more
dad
props
of,
to him.
yes, he's also a dad of like young children. And he still made the time to help me figure out all of this podcasting stuff, especially on the technical side. And that is why we are shouting out our good friend, Trey Whetstone.
Thank
Woo!
you, Trey.
Yay, Trey!
He will forever be in our show DNA.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's going to do it for this episode of Horror Through Her Eyes. Next week is my pick. Get ready, everyone. All right, which is The Black Coat's Daughter from 2015. I have wanted to talk about this movie for so long and wouldn't want to talk about it with anyone else but The Amateur Destroyer. So,
oh, I'm so excited.
I know. So fill in that blind spot if you need to, because we are going to spoil it. It is currently streaming on Max, or you, like me, will have to rent it for $3 on Prime, Vudu, or rent for $4 on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and Apple TV. Do you want me to do these? Please rate and
Oh,
subscribe.
you can't. Do you want me to do whatever you want?
Yeah, you do them.
Okay. Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast anywhere where podcasts are found. Join our Horror Through the Eyes Facebook group page. Email us at horrorthroughhereyes@yahoo.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Threads at Horror Through Her Eyes Pod with an underscore between each of those words. Follow us on TikTok at Horror Through Her Eyes Pod, and follow us on Letterboxd at Horror Her Eyes.
Horror Her Eyes. As we bid you farewell, we hope you enjoyed your time with us on Horror Through Her Eyes. This is our second show, and I'm having a blast. Are you, Jessica?
I am. I'm
Yes.
having a blast.
It has been a blast diving into the depths of dread with you. And until next time, remember to live deliciously.
Yes, live deliciously. Yay. We did it.
Girl, we talked for another 2 hours again.
I know. What's wrong with us?